Hi chickens, thank you so much for joining me today for this very witchy video. I'm very excited about the topic for this particular one. I don't think I've done anything quite like this before, but it sort of came to me and I thought, yeah, I want to do that. Before you look at this video and you think it looks kind of negative, I just want to say for the record that usually on my channel I do rave about the things I love in witchcraft, the things I'm trying, the things I've had success with, and basically what makes my cauldron bubble, what makes me feel very fizzy about witchcraft. So I thought, why not collect together some of the things that I'm just really not that into, that don't flip my witchy switch that much. And I'd be really interested to know from you guys if there's anything that you agree with on this, or if there's anything that you previously weren't into from this list, but then you tried it and you actually found that it really worked for you, because I'm definitely open to different suggestions and I'm definitely open to changing my mind on things as well. So I'm excited to get into this today, and I'm equally excited to be able to say these words to you. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. I've wanted to say that for a while. I was hoping Skillshare were going to hit me up at some point, and they finally did. So thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and also for giving me the opportunity to really explore fully what Skillshare Premium membership is all about and get on board fully with it and think about what I would want to say for the sponsorship for this video to let you know how amazing it is. And it really is amazing. So I think a lot of you already know what Skillshare is all about. It's a massive online learning platform with all these different categories. Basically, you go in your premium membership, you go in the top bar, you sort of search what you want, and you will find courses on all kinds of stuff, guys. There's so many courses about witchy stuff and tarot and astrology and things like that. I don't know why I said it that way, astrology, whatever. Yeah, there's courses on all kinds of things to do with art and design. There's courses on business. There's courses on all kinds of wellness and self-development and health stuff. And honestly, the list goes on and on. There's so many different amazing experts and enthusiastic teachers that really know their field and know their stuff, and they're delivering to you really awesome quality content. So it's amazing to have a Skillshare account. One of the main things I love about Skillshare is that I can dip in and out. So I can binge watch a class if I want to and go through all the videos at the same time if I have the time and the energy. But if I want to, I can also come in, I can watch a couple of the video classes, then I can come out, and then I can go back in again when I've got time. So it's basically like I'm creating my own curriculum, and I can choose classes from different categories, go at my own pace. And another thing I really love about it is that there are transcripts for a lot of the classes I've been taking. So I actually can go through and I can read ahead, see what the teacher is saying, and kind of read along or read it again after I've done the visual sort of thing, after I've watched the videos, because that really helps me with the way that I study as well. As many of you know, I think of art as a form of magic, and a beautiful spiritual alchemical thing happens when we make art. So I definitely want to direct you to one of the latest classes I've been enjoying. It's called Artivism, Create Inspiring Art for Change, and it's delivered to you by an illustrator and artivist called Nicholas Smith. Obviously, artivism is the sort of link between art and activism. So it's art that you create to encourage social change, and it's art that addresses social problems. I really loved this class. It's incredible. It goes into the history of artivism, how to find inspiration for artivism, and all that good stuff. So I really had a good time learning more about this and thinking about how in the future I might want to direct my collage work towards issues to do with social change myself. Skillshare gives you a very big bang for your buck. You can get a yearly subscription for less than $10 a month. If you want to have a go at the Skillshare Premium membership, if you'd like to get a trial, you can head to the down bar and click the link that I provided for you below. And if you are one of the first 1,000 people to click that link, you will be able to get a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership. So go ahead and do that now. 10 things I do not do in my witchcraft. I think some of these things are going to be things that some of you know if you've been following me for long enough, and some of them might be a little bit surprising. I might not have spoken about them before on the channel. Let's start at the very beginning then. The first of the 10 things that I don't really do as a witch. I don't enjoy doing it. It's not something that really calls to me. And that is working with ancestors. It's never been something that I have really felt taken with. And I think a lot of that has got to do with the difficulties I've had with the whole theme of family in my life. There's been some real pain around that particular topic and around my own position within both of my family structures. Even with immediate family, there's been a lot of tumultuous difficulty, a lot of trauma in various generations of my family, a lot of estrangement and difficulty, arguments, conflict, all of that stuff. And so I think for that reason, as much as for any other, ancestral work doesn't feel like something that really resonates with me, not when there are members of my family alive and well that I haven't spoken to for a decade and don't intend to speak to anytime soon. And I don't want it to come across like I'm being disparaging of ancestor work. But I do think that for a lot of people, it doesn't make sense for the kind of reason that I'm describing, right? So maybe me talking about this will perhaps open a dialogue down in the comments, because I know that a lot of people feel kind of quite bereft at being unable to do ancestral work, and they look at the connections other people have with their ancestors, either with their long distant ancestors or with ancestors that they knew, relatives that died and they actually had a relationship with them, and they look at that ancestral stuff and they think, oh wow, I really want that in my witchcraft, that seems really enriching, that seems really nurturing, I wish I could have that. But actually, for me, I think I had my time to make my peace very much with the fact that it was not going to be something that would call to me, because actually family is a word that has some very difficult associations for me in many ways. And when I say family, I mean, you know, you've got a matching percentage of DNA, there's actually a blood relationship there, that kind of thing, or people that marry into your family. So basically by family, I mean traditionally what you would perceive as being family, as opposed to chosen family, which I very much do like that term. I enjoy the term chosen family, although that also does have its sore points and its wounds for me, but I feel much more connected to that than I do with the idea of in any way venerating or working with my ancestral line. I have worked with a lot of clients that feel, like I said, that sense of being sort of bereft of something that they feel could be really magical for them, really special for them, and that they would love to have in their witchcraft. And some of them have come to a point over the course of our sessions where they have been able to incorporate ancestral work into their practice. Others have come to the point of acceptance that it's not something that necessarily calls to them because of their particular life journey and because of the associations that they have with family, or even with some of the risks involved in ancestral work. For example, calling through an ancestor that they would not want to work with and that they are kind of nervous of calling through. So I think it really depends on the individual, and I don't think there's any conclusion that is necessarily the right one. You know, for me, I honestly do not feel like I want to push for any kind of ancestor work. I certainly do feel that it is possible to connect with ancestors that have passed over, and there have been so many incredible stories that I've heard from clients of this happening, and I certainly have had experiences in my own family of connecting with ancestors who have passed over. And so it's not that I think that kind of thing is out of the question in terms of what can be done, it's just something that doesn't call to me, and I think for me I've made my peace with that over the course of time. I do like the idea of the word ancestor being more broadly used though, so I like the idea of my ancestors being perhaps feminists from former generations, or you know, sort of like wild sovereign artist women of former generations, or, you know, just outliers, rebels, mavericks. I think people with specific visions that are similar to my own, political outlooks that are similar to my own. I like to think that there is a feeling of the ancestral energy coming through there as well, but when it comes to the whole DNA, actual family line stuff, yeah, that's not for me. The second thing that I don't do as a witch is I don't always carve sacred space, and I know that for some people that is pure fucking sacrilege, and for others you're going to be like, well yeah, I mean, why carve sacred space all the time if you don't feel it, or if it's not doing anything for you? So I think people will have very different feelings on this, but for me, I like to feel into whether or not sacred space is required before I do workings. And sometimes it's not only when I'm doing workings that I might think sacred space is required, but even before sort of very deep devotionals or rituals or whatever the case might be. But because I do the majority of workings in my bedroom, and I do a lot of energy work in my bedroom, and I feel like my bedroom is very much on lock energetically, and it's very high vibe in there the majority of the time, I do not feel the need to carve a sacred circle around myself. It just feels like something that is surplus to my particular requirements, and so I very often do not do it. If I do workings in the living room, I will carve sacred space. It feels more appropriate to do it there. If I do workings outside, or if I do workings when I'm away from home, I will definitely carve sacred space there. And I sometimes occasionally do like to carve sacred space around my bed in the bedroom, especially if I've been having lots of nightmares. I find that that's useful to do. But I do not feel the deep instinct or the sort of intuitive pull to carve sacred space around my altar when I'm doing workings in my bedroom, because my bedroom feels like an area of sacred space. I think of it as like Glinda the Good Witch's bubble in Wizard of Oz. So for me, you know, there's no point. Why would you carve sacred space around Glinda's pink bubble in The Wizard of Oz? I mean, the pink bubble is pretty airtight, you know. You know that energetically only good shit is inside that bubble. So if that's how I feel about my bedroom, what's the point in carving sacred space? Please don't at me, people. There's no need to get at me down in the comments and be like, what the hell, you need to carve sacred space, or Pazuzu is going to come and rip your head off and shit down your neck. Honestly, I'm not convinced of that. And I think what I'm convinced of is the most important in the magic and ritual that only I am doing. So I fully sign myself off on on, like, you know, not making sacred space. I give myself leave of that obligation. I feel very comfortable not carving sacred space in my bedroom. So do not panic. I've got it all under control. My friend got me some vegan cold brew, and yes, thank you, friend who got me vegan cold brew. Oh my goddess, it's bloody lovely. Okay, onward to the next thing that I don't really do. This is not something that I forego all the time, but it's something that I can forego quite often, and I do forego quite often, and that is cakes and ale. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, who's watching this being like, what the fuck is cakes and ale? If you're not a witch, or if you just don't use that terminology anymore, I don't know what's happening with the kids these days. I'm a little long in the tooth. But basically, cakes and ale is when, after you do a lot of ritual work or spellcraft, you do some really intense witchy shenanigans, you feel a little bit like, you know, floaty and a bit weird, like you're not really fully embodied, you do not feel tethered to the earth. And so it's a good idea, after you finish things up, to ingest something, very much like what happens in Spirited Away, where you ingest something from this world so that you become tethered to the world and you're not sort of floating around feeling like you've got one foot on the Milky Way. And cakes and ale is not always something that I require, simply put. In fact, if anything, I mean, cakes and ale can be anything, right? It can be a scone and some coffee. It doesn't have to be cakes and ale. But if anything, for me, the idea of cakes and ale would be to eat something before I do my spiritual work, my ritual, my spell, my high vibe witchy shenanigans. I would eat something before, and it wouldn't be anything cakey. It would usually be bananas and nuts or something like that. And then the ale, if the ale was actually going to be alcohol, right, then I would be drinking it during the ritual. If it was a long ritual, that would be lovely. It's lovely to have a glass of red wine partway through a ritual or spell. I think it's great to incorporate it, myself personally. Or I would like a drink at the end as a kind of celebration and reward. So I wouldn't even have them together, and they would be used for completely different things. I always do have some water with me while I'm performing a spell, doing a ritual, devotional. I always do like to just walk water around my apartment with me wherever I happen to be anyway. But yeah, with cakes and ale, it doesn't really work like that for me. I rarely feel like I need to eat something to ground afterwards. I may sometimes feel like I need to get in the bath, have a shower, do something else a little bit embodying, maybe just sort of work up a quick sweat, you know, just do a few eagle crunches or something like that. But yeah, it will rarely be the case that I feel like, oh, food is the thing I need to ground me. I don't know if that's a fire sign thing or what, but I just don't necessarily associate food with coming back to myself. It could also be that I'm a recovered eating disordered person. I don't know what it is, but for some reason food is not the thing I would think of to ground me. And maybe there are different reasons for that. There could be a number of different variables at work there. The fourth thing that I don't really do that much as a witch is something that I really want to change this year. And that is, I don't actually read that many witchy books anymore. And I think it's because I sort of overloaded. I was going to say OD'd, but I don't know if it's not really like, I'm not sure if that's an inappropriate way of saying it. But yeah, I kind of overloaded on witchy books for quite a long time. And I loved the scene in The Craft, or I think there's a couple of scenes in The Craft, yeah, where they're reading witchy books and they're sort of sharing with each other. Oh, look what I read, look what I've, like, yeah, there was a few sort of booky bits in The Craft. And I remember when I was younger and I started to really realise I wanted to make the commitment, because I definitely had claimed the word witch before The Craft came out. But I wanted to make the commitment upon seeing that film and thinking more about it and thinking more about how empowered it made me feel. And I remember thinking, yeah, I'm going to be the most bookish of the bookish witches. I can't wait. I want to have a stack of, I want to have an occult library. And I think I might have just sort of you know, really gone there, and then felt like I wanted to very much take my foot off that gas and read other things and just enjoy exploring other parts of my sort of pleasure for reading. So I do want to come back to that, because sometimes people ask me for recommendations on witchy books, whether it's beginners books, whether it's more advanced books, whether it's books about specific things. And sometimes I can give recommendations of 1 or 2 books that I've read in the last 5 years, but I usually end up deferring and sending that person away to some of the amazing videos that other witches have made online about different books you can get your hands on that are really good. So I usually end up knowing the bookish witches that are around on the internet who have made amazing videos, and I just send people there, because I'm really not that person to give that advice. You know, it's been a while since I really cracked a lot of witchy books, which is kind of embarrassing for somebody who's just written one. But actually, my editor and I spoke before I started writing Rebel Witch about whether or not I should dive headfirst into a lot of the contemporary resources that are around. And I had read a few, you know, I've definitely sort of suggested 1 or 2 in the suggested reading at the back of the book. So it's not like I've been completely put off of witchy books and I haven't read any for ages. I've definitely read some. But we did discuss, you know, the possibility of me perhaps really getting into some of the contemporary resources that have been widely favoured, and we both decided that, like, hey, no, you know what, just go in raw, write it exactly as you want to write it, don't take any sort of influence or have any energy from any of the other books that are out there. And I thought that would be a really good idea. But I remember thinking in 2019, when we were kind of brainstorming this and hashing it out, that yeah, I would like to actually, after I've written the book, deeply dive into witchy resources again, because I miss it. I really do miss it. I think I'd have to be quite discerning about what I was going to read, because I don't consider myself in any way a beginner anymore. And so I would like to swerve resources that are saying the same kinds of things that I was reading about a few years ago. But yeah, number 4 of the 10, I don't read witchy books. It's not something that I've been reading for quite some time, but I am going to be changing that one. I do feel like I want to get back into it now. I think I've been out of the game long enough. I've been sitting on the Sorcerer's subs bench for long enough, and I want to get right back into it now. Number 5 of the 10 things that I just don't really do that much in my witchy life. I do not make my own props. I do not sort of fashion my own ingredients much. I actually really enjoy to purchase oils and incense blends, etc., that have been made by other witches who have much more of a handle on herbalism and really do have the know-how, and that's basically their area of expertise. I am completely happy to acknowledge that it's not necessarily where my passion is, and I love to use things that have been blended and have been grown and made and crafted by witches that do have that as an area of expertise and take my money, you know. So there's definitely things I haven't made along the way that I've much preferred to purchase from other witches. And I do mean other witches, not kind of like, you know, massive factories on the other side of the world where they're just churning things out to be bought, but actually, you know, that artisan vibe that you have really respected what a witch is doing and what a witch is selling, and you have wanted to really sort of put your money there and receive something from someone that, you know, put the passion into it and really understood what they were doing. I have actually been a little bit touchy about this in the past, I'm not gonna lie. I think that there have certainly been these overarching attitudes that exist in the witchy community around making all of your own things, crafting everything yourself, and, you know, there's definitely an argument for that. But I also like to kind of push back against that and remind people that actually it's okay to not be the person that is going to be the best at making everything. It's okay to know that you might not necessarily have an interest in crafting your own candles. You might not necessarily have an interest in making your own poppet. You might actually want to go to a witch that you feel does impressive work, and you might feel a really deep emotional attachment to something that individual would make. So, and it doesn't have to be a witch, you know, there's plenty of different avenues you can go into for purchasing things from people that you just respect their work. Maybe they're an amazing artist, maybe they are, you know, they have sort of a business that's geared towards gardening and botany and growing things or whatever. Whatever the case might be, you might want to go in another direction rather than trust yourself with learning every single thing and, you know, getting your little Scouts badge for every single thing that you do. Why not accept that somebody else earned their badge long ago and is way better at the thing than you are? And if you have a little bit of spare income and you feel like that's something that would be really special for you, put it on your budget and don't feel guilty about it, you know, just do so without apology. So I've definitely kind of remind people and checked people sometimes when they've said, oh, you know, the only way to have it mean anything is to do it yourself. I often think, you know what, that's not always the case. I have really enjoyed using certain things that have been blended and made and crafted and put together by other witches. The sixth thing that I do not really do as a witch, and by do not really do, I mean I don't do it at all, and that is I don't hex and I don't curse. Neither of those things happen to be my bag, and I've definitely made at least one video about this, if not two. I've definitely made one dedicated video about this. I think I have talked about it in another video. Oh yeah, so I made a Rambling Witch video about assumptions and misjudgments and stuff like that, and within that video I do talk a little bit about the misconception that people have about me, that because I don't hex and I don't curse, it means that I've never been wronged and I've never had the feeling that I wanted to hex or curse somebody. So I obviously just don't understand what that is all about. Or maybe sometimes people think I've just never come across any injustice that needs to be sort of meted out by myself as an individual. And none of those things are true. I have definitely been fucked over. I definitely have come across injustice. I definitely have come across things that I needed to deal with, and I've needed to put my foot down. But I've done that in ways that were not magical. And that's just how I feel, and that's just my personal ethics. I definitely am not against people hexing or cursing, and I think that the situations that lead up to such things are extremely nuanced and highly individualized. So who the fuck am I to put a blanket generalization over anybody's reasons or everybody's reasons for hexing or cursing? I think it's a really important thing to have in the bag, to have in the witchy toolkit, and I definitely am under no illusion that I could very comfortably and competently do it. So I think that's one thing about me that maybe some people find a little bit strange or whatever, but like, I don't do it, but I definitely know I could do it. And that is where I'm comfortable. That's just where it always feels like it's worked for me. So I'll leave down below that episode of Rambling Witch for you guys if you want to watch that. And also I'll leave down below the video that I did quite a long time ago. Yes, I've got a fringe that's blunter than Simon Cowell's comments in bloody Pop Idol or whatever the fuck it is, American Idol. Yes, it's blunt as all get out. And I'm talking about hexes and curses exclusively in that video. So I'll leave that down below too, because I think I would have worded things a bit differently nowadays than I did back then, but essentially it all checks out. It's basically the same way I feel now. Number 7, I suppose you could say it's somewhat the opposite of hexes and curses. I do not do love spells. I try not to do any spellcraft that evidently, overtly infringes on somebody's free will. So, you know, anything that would make somebody feel differently about me than they actually know they feel in their own truth, I try to avoid that like the plague. You know, that's not something that I want to get into. Again, I suppose as with hexing and cursing, I'm fairly sure I could competently do it. But even if my thinking goes too much towards extremely strong fantasies of altering the way somebody perceives me or the way somebody interacts with me, I even start to pull back from that, because I think my imagination and my will is so potent that I want to be really careful that I don't inadvertently do that as well. I'm one of those witches who very much does trust myself to do spellcraft that benefits other people, that has a positive effect on other people's lives, that opens roads for other people, or, you know, helps people to release pain that they're going through or move obstacles. I'm happy to do that, and I have certainly done that without consulting people at certain times, and the results have been, you know, pleasing to me and pleasing to the person I was doing the spell for. So I'm not one of those that feels like I absolutely need to get somebody to sign off on anything that I might be doing, because I really do trust myself to do it with competence and to direct my energy and intention in a way where it's not going to be misguided or accidentally sent somewhere that it shouldn't have been. I do not believe that my magic is going to backfire, but I think that's after many years of solid practice and trusting myself and knowing that the results have continued to be consistently positive and have not caused trouble thus far. So I'm just going to continue on. But I do think it's an ethical thing that every witch needs to go through in their own way and figure out for themselves. And I actually do approach that in my book, Rebel Witch. There is a section on ethics where I just basically ask people to lean into their own ideas about whether or not they would do spellcraft for people and whether or not they would inform those people or ask permission from those people in advance. And I think you know, wherever you fall on the spectrum there, I don't think there's a wrong answer. I think it's just really important to ask yourself the ethical question and come to a decision that you are comfortable with for your own reasons. But, you know, to me, doing a spell for someone to help them go for their perfect job, or to realize how amazing they are, or, you know, to level up in some way is quite different from doing a spell on somebody to make them fall in love with me or want to have sex with me or whatever. That's quite a different thing. And for me, that just, it doesn't feel right. So I have never done it. I mean, you know, it can be difficult just to sometimes rein in being so goddamn irresistible, because that in itself can be a form of spellcraft. But, you know, what can you do? It is what it is. I am who I am. Sorry, I'm just being a complete dickhead now. Let's move on. Okay, what's the next one? Right. Number 8, the 8th of the 10 things that I do not really do on my witchy path is I do not doubt my path. I don't really give that much of the time of day. I've definitely been through spiritual slumps, for sure. I've definitely been through times of inaction and times of uncertainty where my path was in flux and I didn't really know what direction I was really going in. And I might have felt like I needed a break, or I might have just felt exhausted by other things going on in my life, and I've taken a step back, or whatever the case may be. But I think of a spiritual slump as quite different to a kind of crisis of faith. And that is something that I don't really entertain. And I don't mean that as in, oh, hey, anybody that's gone through a crisis of faith can just choose, like I do, to not feed into it and to not sort of become overwhelmed by it, because I think every situation is different, and I think there are various different reasons why somebody might experience a crisis of faith or doubt their power or doubt their ability. But for me, if I ever come across any feeling like that, I intentionally make sure that it's very short-lived. I just bring to mind all of the results I've had previously, everything that magic and witchcraft has given to me, all the beauty that it's brought into my life, the fact that I've felt since I was really tiny that I was a witchy being. And I think about all that and I very quickly just get over that hump. You know, it's not something that I allow, I suppose, to overtake me. And that's not me saying that you're weak if you've had a crisis of faith or if you've doubted your path at all. And in fact, that's something else I go into in the book. Sorry, this is not a marketing pitch for my book. However, if you do want to pre-order it, all the details are down below. But it is something else I go into in the book, is like not believing in your magic, not believing in your witchhood, and what to do about that as well. Number 9 of the 10 things that I don't really do in my witchy path is I do not recognize and celebrate all of the Esbats or all of the Sabbats. And I think that's something a lot of people can probably attest to themselves in their own path. You know, for me, Samhain is always a given. I mean, I'm never not going to recognize Samhain. I think a lot of witches are the same there. And you know, I think Beltane is always fairly important, although certainly there have been times where I've just only touched on it. I also am a real fan of Imbolc or Imolc, however you want to say it. That's always a sort of powerful time for me. However, I definitely have had years where I have not recognised it in any outward manner. I don't like to put pressure on myself. I like to be interested and intrigued by how I'm going to feel about every Sabbat when it rolls around, as opposed to seeing the Sabbats as areas of stability for me that I always return back to and I always make the effort with, because that simply just isn't me. It wouldn't be very realistic and it wouldn't be very honest of me, I think, if I put myself through that machinery of all 8 Sabbats and actually recognising them all in some outward way whenever they roll around. It's just not very me, you know? I always say anyway that as soon as I make a rule, I break a rule. It's just how I am, and that's why I've never put my videos on a very specific schedule, or my newsletters, or my anything like that. I've always been very much about having a little bit of flow and freedom in how I produce things, because the minute I say I'm going to do a video every Monday, Wednesday and Friday or whatever, I know that I'm going to, something in me, something in the way I am is going to say, no, I'm not doing that now, you know? So I just think my inner rebel is very strong. And so at the point where I decided the Sabbats are going to be those points of stability and those points of focus, instantly I know that I'm just going to decide that's not going to be what's going to happen, and I'm going to be stubborn and I'm going to say no to myself. So there's no point. I love the fact that I've got the moon phases there that I can check in with and tap into, and I can time things by them and all of that. It's beautiful. I'm really connected to lunar energy. I do like to recognize the half moon because it is sacred to my matron in my practice. I am really interested in the full moon and the dark moon. However, there's always just got to be that flexibility. And sometimes I just don't know what fucking moon phase it is, guys. I'm just going to be real. You know, as much as I say I'm connected to lunar energy, that beautiful orb is not always in my orbit. And I suppose it's true with anything that, you know, there's nothing in my practice that's always in my orbit every day or consistently enough that it would characterize my practice, I suppose. You know, even with my matron, sometimes I won't do devotional for a couple of weeks or really check in, or she will not kind of, her energy won't be around me for a while. That's quite normal with my relationship with hell. So, you know, for me, it's lucky dip. It's like, what's going to happen next? You know, I have to allow myself to be intrigued by it rather than being too decisive about what it's going to be before it gets here. Number 10 of the 10 things that I do not really do that much in my witchy practice: I don't debate what is and is not witchcraft. I do not debate what it means to be a witch and what is not witchy, or what you know, what means that you don't qualify. I don't get into these discussions. I don't really remember ever being a fan of these discussions. I have definitely seen them in the online space, in Facebook groups and on YouTube over the course of time, and I have sidestepped that. I've given that the hard swerve, as we say in England. It's just not for me. It doesn't flick my switch. I think there's just so much variation, so much nuance, so much diversity, so much range, and it's beautiful that way. And so why would I want to clip the incredible, magnificent, psychedelic, kaleidoscopic rose bush that is the craft by being incredibly specific and prescriptive about what it is and is not? You know, I just think that's a drag. So that's definitely something I don't do, have never done, and do not plan to do anytime in the future. And with that being said, these were the 10 things that I don't really do in my witchy practice. They don't flick my witchy switch. Now I want to hear from you down in the comments. I definitely want to hear from you guys in the comments on this one. I'm very intrigued. Was there anything on this list that you also don't do? Was there anything on this list that you never used to do but you do now? What are the things you really don't vibe with and you don't do in your witchy path? Even if you see witches left, right and centre all around you doing it, it's not for you. I would love to know. And darlings, I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for being here with me. Don't forget, if you want to join my Patreon, you can find all the details for that down below. Please subscribe to my newsletter. I'm sending things out about once a month now. So if you want some news and some updates on Rebel Witch and everything that's coming, please do get subscribed, and I'll give you some special updates over there as well. Much love, darlings, and blessed be as always. Mwah.